I'm Bob Isaacson, and I'm very grateful to be here at the Green and Healthy Festival. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to introduce my organization, Dharma Voices for Animals, talk a bit about mindfulness and meditation, and then I'm going to give you some resources that you can use in order to support yourself. If you're already vegan or vegetarian, or if you're curious about it, I'm going to give you some resources. So I'm talking to you actually from California, in the USA. I was an attorney specializing in human rights and civil rights law. I did this for a number of years, and I defended people against the death penalty. That was my specialty here in California and also in the central part of the United States, in Chicago, Illinois. I became interested in the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, about 26 years ago, and I was drawn to his teachings of compassion, universal compassion, and non-harming. I started going on a number of retreats, long retreats of a month or longer. I did that for a number of years, and about 13 years ago, I started teaching the Dharma here in the U.S. So my organization is called Dharma Voices for Animals. Nickname or abbreviation is DVA, Dharma Voices for Animals. We are the only international Buddhist animal rights, animal advocacy organization in the entire world. It started here in California and decided it was time to create an organization to encourage Buddhist lay people, monastics, and lay teachers to talk about this issue, to talk about the issue about whether it's okay to be eating animals and animal products. And we thought, and this has proven to be true, that the more people talk about this, the more talk about it in communities and with themselves, the more likely it is that people will start turning towards a plant-based diet. We thought that DVA would probably be a U.S. organization. We really didn't think about international when we started it some 10 years ago. As we started getting going with this, realized that most of the Buddhists, of course, don't live in the United States. They live in Asia. In fact, about almost 99%, 98.5% is the estimate of the Buddhists in the world live in Asia. So after a few years, I turned my attention, the attention of DVA, towards Asia. Currently, we have 3 countrywide projects in Asia, in the countries of Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Vietnam. Although I have traveled to and have given public talks, and we have chapters in some of these countries, to many other Asian countries in the last 5 years, including China, Malaysia, Singapore, Myanmar, Korea, and Taiwan. So maybe someday we will have projects in those countries. Right now, we're in the 3 countries I mentioned, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Vietnam. So why Dharma Voices for Animals? What was I thinking? What were we thinking about when we created this? So the Buddhist teachings, called the Dharma or the Dhamma, depending on which country you're in, which tradition, is as inclusive a teaching as there is in any of the religions in the world. So those of you that are familiar with the Dharma know that the Buddha spoke about sentient beings. These are beings that feel, that are capable of feeling pain. And what he said clearly in his teachings, and this is the first precept, it's also part of the compassion teaching of the Buddha and wise livelihood. The Buddha said that humans must treat all sentient beings with compassion and to not harm any other sentient beings. So you think about the implication of this. Although we do not directly harm animals when we eat them, we are supporting the harming of animals, the terrible lives that they lead, and also the terrible deaths that they have to endure when they're being killed, mass killings at slaughterhouses. So this was one reason that DVA was started. And also that there are so many Buddhists in the world, approximately 1 billion Buddhists in the world. So there's a huge number of people who identify as Buddhists in the world. And the last thing is that it is the most direct teaching about not harming animals that there is of all the religious traditions. So let's take a closer look at this, because there are, of course, many different traditions of Buddhism. And Buddhism takes different forms in different countries, different cultures, different language, different understandings and implementation of the Dharma or the Buddhist teachings. So first we have two basic traditions of Buddhism. There's Mahayana and there's Theravada. In Mahayana, which is the vast majority of Buddhists in the world, China, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, etc., the teachings are very clear. The Mahayana sutras or scriptures clearly say that the Buddha was vegetarian. And he expected his followers to be vegetarian. In the Theravadan tradition, so this is the Pali Canon for those of you that are interested in Buddhism or know something about it. The Pali Canon is the embodiment of Buddhism in the Theravada tradition. The countries that follow Theravadan Buddhism are Thailand, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and also Cambodia and Laos. In Theravada Buddhism, the question of whether to eat animals or not requires a little more examination than it does in Mahayana. In Mahayana Buddhism, Buddha was vegetarian. We expected his followers to be. In Theravadan Buddhism, we have the general teaching that we should treat all sentient beings with compassion, and the teaching of non-harming in the first precept. Don't harm a sentient being. So just looking at that, one would think that all Theravadan Buddhists would be vegetarian, hopefully vegan, but at least vegetarian. But of course, this is not so in the world. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the practicalities, what's actually happening in the world in different countries. I'm going to share that with you in a few minutes. So in Theravadan Buddhism, there is a teaching, a sutta, called the Jivaka Sutta. And in this teaching, the Buddha established a very narrow exception for Buddhists. And he said there, I'm summarizing it, he said there that when a monastic is begging for food, or we can say going on alms round with the begging bowl into the villages, going door to door, if someone puts into the Buddhas and the Buddhists or the Buddhist monastics alm or begging bowl, something that is animal flesh, the monastic may eat that animal flesh, but only if he or she knows that the animal was not killed for them. If, on the other hand, the monastic suspects, or hears or sees that an animal was killed to produce the flesh that goes into the begging bowl, the monastic is not allowed to eat that food. This is a very narrow exception. It applies only to monastics, not to lay people. There's no such exception for lay people. And it's only when on alms rounds, if a monastic is ordering food, the Jivaka Sutta, does not provide an exception to the general rule, don't eat animals. And also the bar is very low. If the monastic merely suspects that the animal was killed for them, they're not allowed to eat the animal flesh. So this is the state of Theravada Buddhism. Now let's take a look at how this is applied in real life. So I mentioned we have countrywide projects. Dharma, Voices for Animals, has countrywide projects in 3 countries. 2 of those 3 countries are Theravada countries. Thailand. Let's take a look at Thailand. We started our countrywide project earlier this year. So there are about 300,000 monastics in Thailand. There are about 65 million Buddhists, people who self-identify as Buddhists in Thailand. The monastics in Thailand, for large part, are mostly not vegetarian. So what we're doing at DVA is we are working with the monastics on health, talking to them about their own health, because as a general rule, the Thai monastics are not healthy. They're actually less healthy than the general population in Thailand. And we strongly believe that's because of all of the animal flesh and animal products that they're eating. So we're working with them on a really friendly, cooperative way, giving them information about health, supporting them in any way we can. They're so important to the maintenance of Buddhism in the world. So they're very important to Buddhism in the world. And we're finding a terrific gratitude from the monastics in Thailand that we're working at some of the largest wats or temples there. We're finding a lot of gratitude and openness to take a look at diet from a health point of view. And we're hopeful that as more and more Thai monastics turn away from animal flesh and animal products, that this will for sure filter down and influence the followers in Thailand. And so this is the DVA project in Thailand. Let's take a look at another Theravada country, Sri Lanka. Now in Sri Lanka, unlike Thailand, there are a significant number, many monastics, nuns, and monks who are vegetarian. There has been no resistance that I've seen to our project coming into the country, talking to school children, talking to people in industry, talking to army soldiers in that country about the health benefits and the other benefits. Also, of course, the great environmental benefits of a plant-based diet. There's just cooperation. We have been so happy. The monastic community in Sri Lanka is very open to our message and very supportive to our message. And there is a lot of support for vegan and vegetarian lifestyle in Sri Lanka itself. One more country. Let's take a look at Vietnam. So Vietnam, as I mentioned before, is a Mahayana country. The Mahayana sutras, or scriptures, make it plain that the Buddha was vegetarian, and he required or strongly suggested that his followers be. In Vietnam, the largest organization, the Vietnamese Buddhist Sangha, claims, the largest Buddhist organization, has about 50,000 monastics. All of these monastics are vegetarian. And in Vietnam, vegetarian is almost the same as vegan. Very little dairy and eggs eaten there at the temples. The temples are virtually vegan. But not very many of the Vietnamese lay people are vegetarian. So in their country, we are working closely with the more than 50,000 monastics to try to encourage the lay community to move towards at least a vegetarian and better yet, a vegan diet. So as you can see, although the teachings of the Buddha were really strong about preference for a diet that does not include animal flesh, out of compassion, out of non-harming, wise livelihood as well. Actually, some 2,600 years later, we, DVA, have a lot of work to do. But this is, this is a place of cooperation. We want to talk about not only compassion towards the animals, but also health, the health benefits of a plant-based diet. This conference this festival is all about the possibilities and the benefits of a plant-based, or at least as a starting point, a vegetarian diet. There's so much written in this, the major diseases in the world, cancer and heart disease and obesity and diabetes. When one has a plant-based diet, or we can say vegan diet in the West, the chances of getting these terrible diseases goes way down. What about the environmental impact of eating animals and eating animal products? I'm sure there'll be other speakers talking about this, but I want to briefly mention it. The United Nations commissioned a number of the top scientists in the world to do a study. This was back about 12, 13, almost 14 years ago. And they concluded that the single biggest cause of global warming in the world was factory farming, the process of raising animals for slaughter. So we're talking about green issues, which are so important to our earth and to all of us. The first step, the most significant step one can take, is to stop eating animals and to stop eating their products. About compassion for animals, which is really the heart of the Buddha's message. Back 2,600 years ago, there were not concerns about global warming. Nobody even knew about that. And there wasn't really anything about health and studies about heart disease and cancer. Who knows how, there probably wasn't much of that back then. But the Buddha did talk about sentient beings and their right to be free from suffering. Every chicken that is kept in confinement, every chicken that is slaughtered so we can eat them, every chicken wants to be free from suffering, just like we want to be free from suffering. Every chicken wants to lead a peaceful life without fear, just like we want to lead a peaceful life without fear. So when we understand this, we can respect the life of animals and not eat them, not eat their flesh, bite into it, chew on it, and swallow it. Because when we do that, we're really right in the middle. We are an important part of that process. So, in order to lead a compassionate life, isn't it a good idea to turn away from eating animals and animal products? So I also want to talk a bit about, there's one more thing I wanted to say about this before I move on, and that is, from the research I have done, and from my travels in Asia, and talking to people all over the world, it's pretty clear that before the European countries came to Asia, and I'm talking about places like Sri Lanka, like Thailand, like Myanmar, and pretty much all of the Asian countries, there was widespread vegetarianism. In the coastal areas of some of these countries, yes, there was fishing. But these countries were primarily vegetarian for long periods of time. And these colonial powers came in, invaded and occupied Asian countries. And the result was they were taught, this is a terrible lesson, but they were taught people in Asian countries that it's okay to eat animals, it's actually better for you to eat animals. And this is a really unfortunate message. So what we're doing in the countries where DVA has a presence is that we're asking folks in Asia to go back to their roots, to go back to the way things were, to lead a healthier life, to be kinder to the environment, and also from DVA's point of view, most of all, to be kinder to animals, to stop eating them. I'd like to share with you some of the resources that are available, and these are DVA resources. First of all, we have a film. The film is called Animals and the Buddha, and it was produced by Keegan Kuhn. Keegan Kuhn, a very well-known American filmmaker. He's also done Cowspiracy, you might have heard of that, and What the Health. Oh, and incidentally, Will Tuttle, who's one of the presenters at this festival, appears in the film. So the film has been translated into 12 languages. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can watch it on our website. We also are very active, Dharma Voices for Animals, we're very active in social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we have our own YouTube channel. So we invite you to visit our website. I'll say some more about that in a minute. And follow us on social media. You can see what we're doing around the world, and we also offer nutritional information and some cooking, some recipes, etc. So you can, if you are not vegetarian, you can see how easy the transition is to a vegetarian, or better yet, a vegan lifestyle. We also have a speakers series. We started that this summer. Our speaker series talks about, and we're going to do this about every month, talks about the Buddhist teachings for those that are interested. What I just gave you was just a small summary, a very short summary of what's a much bigger topic. And if you're interested in this, we've already had one episode of our speaker series devoted to this. Also, we're going to give cooking ideas from all around the world. Not American cooking, there'll be a little bit of that, but also cooking from different places, including Thailand and Sri Lanka. Also South Africa, cooking from South Africa, vegan cooking from South Africa. We're going to give nutritional information in the speaker series, etc. And there'll be some guided meditations from some of the best known and most respected Buddhist teachers. So mindfulness is a centerpiece of all this. When one is mindful of what we take into our bodies, when one pays attention to what it is that they're eating and how that feels emotionally and physically, we can make better choices of what goes into our body. So the mindfulness practice, which of course the Buddha taught, and a lot of other teachers, you don't have to be Buddhist to understand the importance of mindfulness, but mindfulness allows us to make better decisions. When we are aware of what it is that's happening in any particular moment, we have a better chance to make a good decision. So I invite everyone to bring mindfulness, and let me define mindfulness, to bring mindfulness into your life, to try to practice mindfulness. So mindfulness is knowing your present experience in the present moment. That's all it is. Or you could say being present. So mindfulness then, regarding what we eat, allows us to make better decisions on what it is that we're putting into our body. And then, of course, respect for the environment is so important. And this goes hand in hand with DVA's message and also the message of veganism and vegetarianism. When we care about the earth, We don't want them raising animals for slaughter. It uses up an enormous amount of land and water, and it's an incredibly inefficient way, an inefficient way, the worst way possible to feed ourselves. Because we put 8 or 9 grams of plant in every gram of animal flesh that we eat. So we're wasteful. We're incredibly wasteful when we eat animal flesh and animal products. This is another reason, when we're mindful, we can see this. This is another reason to be vegan, or at least vegetarian, as a transition to veganism. So I mentioned social media. I mentioned our speakers series. We also have the 3 projects that I mentioned. So maybe you're in one of these countries, or maybe you're hearing this being Sri Lankan or Thai or Vietnamese. And then you can connect with we have Facebook pages specifically for these projects run by the people in those countries. So you can follow us on social media there. And then also we have chapters around the world. I didn't mention this before, but DVA is not only involved in Asia, although that's here in Asia, this is our biggest opportunity because of the number of Asian Buddhists. But also we're in Europe. We're of course in the United States, where we are registered as an NGO, and where we first began. We're also in South America. We're also in Australia and in Asia. We have an advisory council, DVA does. Some of the top Buddhists in the world are on our advisory council, both monastics and lay people. And I also mentioned Will Tuttle, our friend Will, who's one of the presenters here at the festival. Will is on our advisory council as well. So what can you do? If you're interested in DVA, if you want to find out more information, check out our website. It's just Dharma Voices for FOR animals.org. And when you go there, it's easy to find, become a member. And you can become a member. You add your support to our organization when you do it, and you get a regular email e-newsletter. Every few months we send that out. You can follow us. You can see when our speakers program is going on. We stream that on both Facebook and YouTube. But you can also join us on the webinar where you can ask questions directly to our speakers. And so we invite you to do this. We really, we are an international organization. So you don't have to be vegan or vegetarian to become a member of DVA. We're interested, anyone who's interested in us, who wants to look at eating animals, wants to explore what this is, or wants to support an organization that is advocating for vegetarianism and veganism in the world. I really enjoyed talking to you today, and I know that the festival is and will be even a bigger success as we go on. And I hope that what I've offered to you is useful to you. And I hope that maybe some of you are inspired by what we're doing in the United States here at Dharma Voices for Animals, because I know I'm inspired by much of the work that you are doing. So thank you very much for joining me today, and I hope that we can do this again sometime soon.